Hello, everyone, and welcome. We've got a good audience of around 200 CEOs in the UK and the US. I'm joined by 5 of my colleagues for what I hope is going to be an interesting and informative discussion about AI in mid-market businesses. We're going to talk for about 45 minutes, and then we're going to have 10 minutes of Q&A or thereabouts. Let's just start by kind of lifting the energy, and let me just ask the simple question: AI, apocalypse or opportunity? I'm just going to go round the virtual table here. Steve HB, apocalypse or opportunity?
Definite opportunity for me.
Mike?
Definite opportunity, but an apocalypse if you don't do anything about it and your competitors do.
Steve Cairns?
Being the eternal optimist, it's an opportunity for me.
Alex, opportunity or apocalypse?
I've seen lots of my clients getting great opportunities out of it already.
Ken?
It's an apocalyptic opportunity.
Okay, very
because
good.
if you take no action, you're going to be facing an apocalypse.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. So, again, before we really get into the meat of the conversation, let's just spend a couple of minutes. Can you give a brief example of something exciting or shocking or surprising in the AI world recently, just to kind of get us all in the same place? Steve HB.
I think for me, the biggest exciting thing is that we're starting to get out of that early hype. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing lots of businesses that are coming to the market with real business deliverables. So this is no longer about generic technology. We're starting to see real emerging helpful technologies. Whichever line of business you're in, there are businesses now that are getting funded to attack your particular line of business.
Right. It's
so
not something
it's exciting.
Not something we're just talking about anymore. It's something real.
Yeah.
Mike?
Well, I'd add a bit more colour to Steve HB's point. That the analysis is now showing that 80% of industries across the world are now using generative AI. It is now hitting the mainstream 80% of industries. That's a surprise.
Steve Cairns?
Well, I'm going to have a little bit of a sort of fun observation here. I mean, ChatGPT has only been out for a year, and I read that last week they've introduced a new system called GPTs, where you are able to customize a ChatGPT for your own preference. And one example of that was actually basically a sous chef, someone to help you. You can take a photograph of your countertop with all the food on it or of your fridge, and you can ask it to create a recipe for you to cook there and then from what you've got laid out in front of you. So you're able to, in business context, you can imagine the sort of things you're able to do now where the product was literally 12 months old.
Amazing. Alex?
I think my favorite example right now is financial statements and earning reports from public listed companies are becoming more positive and better delivered when they're being given. And the reason for this is financial firms, quantitative traders, hedge funds are using AI to process not just the transcripts of the earnings reports and the earnings reports themselves, but they're also using AI to listen to the audio. So when a CEO says, we're planning on making 100 million revenue next quarter, it will listen for the tremors in the voice and the ums and the ahs and try and work out how confident that CEO is. And this is such a well-known effect now, and there's such an advantage to be able to use it, that the firms providing earnings reports are making the reports slightly more positive. They're trying to deliver them in a slightly more neutral way. And that's an obvious direct effect of, the usage of AI in AI analysis of earnings.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes people define AI as doing things that typically only a human can. And that's the kind of example there, isn't it, Alex? I mean, that is true. That is intelligent by many definitions. Ken, an example from you?
Yeah, I think nowhere is AI going to have more of an impact than on the customer experience of retail, and how people actually interact with merchants and understanding that customer experience will drive behavior. I think we've all seen the maturing of omni-channel architectures and for being able to market correctly and take advantage of your data and insights, but really providing valuable insight into customers' behavior, their choices, helps guide and steer your product development, helps guide and steer what you're putting out there. And more importantly, it builds a loyalty and a following. If you have a customer that's going to be a repeat customer and you learn their cycles and their habits, you can make recommendations. Amazon for years always said, hey, we're going to say, oh, people bought this, also bought that. But with AI being incorporated more routinely by retailers and wholesalers, for that matter, it gives them an ability to actually anticipate what the needs are going to be. So the holiday season is coming up, and being able to say in, I forgive me for saying this, but in, the end of September, you could start getting your Christmas holiday packages early because you can get, hey, get ahead of the game. We're going to put all this stuff on sale. The whole idea and concept around Prime Day and some of these Black Friday things that you've seen has stemmed from that knowledge of understanding people want to get a head start. So using AI intelligently is really driving the market, and we're starting to see companies left and right incorporating AI chatbots into their website experiences and digital assistants and more immersive technology.
Very good. Let's get into the meat of the conversation then. I suppose the starting point is to say AI is the thing everyone's talking about right now, but why is it so hot right now? Ken, what would you say?
I think AI is hot for three reasons. One is that, let's be honest, the press and the media have built up some hype around it. So, OpenAI and ChatGPT, when it was released, was the fastest growing application. It surpassed everything in terms of adoption. And I think that people starting to realize that you can actually have a conversation and ask a question to ChatGPT and get back a very lengthy description. So it's easy to adopt and understand that. There's a lot more to AI than just ChatGPT. And we also are starting to see, image interpretation and, DALL-E and, some of the other spatials that are out there. But we're starting to see that these platforms have become widely available, that a lot of it started correctly being free. So you can go out there and start testing it with no cost. And I think as people get more experience with it, they start to realize, oh, wait a minute, there's paid services that we can do. So a lot of people went from ChatGPT 3.5 and they paid the $20 a month to get the ChatGPT Plus, and that's now generating revenue. But I think you're starting to see that permeate through, and companies are doing it. The biggest single fundamental reason why AI has gotten so fast and so furious is it's been an open source API as well. So it's very easy to build a plugin. And so now there's an entire third-party eco-development tool out there for you to incorporate AI into your everyday tools. And I think that's what has been the tipping point.
Other views?
Just wanted to give people a little bit more history. This isn't just in the last year this has appeared. AI has been around since the 60s. The tipping point we've reached, though, is computing power and data. The algorithms have developed over the last few years for sure, but the concept of AI has been around. It's coming of age now, partly because processing power has become cheaper and we need a lot of processing power for AI to work. And the second thing is that AI needs data. It needs lots and lots of data, high quality and accurate data to train it so that it can do the things it does. And we're at the tipping point where both of those things are now available. So it's here to stay. This isn't a flash in the pan, some vaporware that will go away in a year's time. It's come of age.
So computing power, data, open source, free access, the confluence of those things is what's led us to this point where it feels like there's a change, but actually you're saying that this has really been building on something that's been going on for decades.
Yeah. I'd add one more point to that, actually. I'd add money. The money people saw what happened with the dot-com boom, and we saw that play out over a 5-6 year period. And I think there were lessons learned there about how you get behind transformational technologies. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so big so quickly, is there are a lot of people who experience in the money markets who experience the dot-com thing, and they've just seen another transformational technology come along, and they're not going to miss out on this one.
We're waiting for the next transformation. But so our audience, though, is mid-market chief execs. If I'm a mid-market chief exec, how do I know where AI is going to fit in my business? Where should I place my bets?
The way I look at it is I'm not a betting man, but I would spread my bets. Someone else had mentioned a lot of this is free right now to try it. And I would spread my bets and try lots of different things. And we may be coming on to talk about how you might set up your organization to do it effectively. But I would spread. I wouldn't be piling lots of money and lots of effort into one particular thing. I'd be trying lots of what's around.
Yeah. One comment I was going to make as well is I think it's a lot easier to access now than it was before. This is no longer the realms of sort of research laboratories. There is AI as a service. Google are offering it. Microsoft are offering it. It's very easy to access, very affordable, and doesn't require ultra smart people to build quite complex, interesting solutions. So I think from a sort of a mid-market business perspective, you don't need to worry about the complexities of taking a long time to build something. You go into Microsoft, AI Azure is one of the platforms that's the most interesting. And there are things literally out of the box that you can build and start to see benefit from almost immediately at a very affordable price.
So the message I'm getting there is that people shouldn't see this as being that they're looking for the knockout punch. What I think you're saying is that it's relatively affordable to try different things and to look at particular opportunities and spread your bets, as you say, Mike. To understand this, then, I guess the question that I would be asking is, what is the cost? Do I see this as a trial? Do I see this as an investment? How do I look at this? Alex?
So I think the cost is going to be borne by a lot of companies in a few different ways. And the obvious immediate one is a lot of software vendors are putting AI into their software right now. They are seeing that as a way of making the software look more valuable. They're going to charge more money. It's incremental revenue. It's a very easy win for them. So that's going to kind of happen across the board. But if we think about how we reap the rewards of keeping using that software and obviously developing AI within an organization, I think the right way is to think about those trials. And as Mike and Steve were saying, thinking about small proofs of concept where we can say AI does make a difference here, and you should be thinking about spending maybe no more than £10,000 or $10,000 on something like that, because you want to do a number of proofs of concept. This is not a mature sector yet. There are no blueprints you can just take off the internet for something that will definitely work for your organization. Custom AI models, we know cost in the millions, but the cost of this is coming down month by month as well. So the cost of training an AI, the cost of the hardware to use it, the cloud services and things gets cheaper every time. And the one thing that I'd say is that the investment and the return on that investment is going to really be dictated by how much unstructured data and qualitative data you have. So previous digital transformation was all about numbers and, finding and categorizing data and structuring it. AI is best when it allows you to work with unstructured data and ideally directly. And if you're in a business where there's a lot of that, customer communications, market data, textual images, audio, AI is going to enable you to unlock the value of that a lot more easily.
So without wanting to teach the audience to suck eggs, your point here about unstructured data is that traditionally computing, for want of a better word, would be about databases and what we would call structured information. Whereas the point here is that this can be a stack of boxes of files at the back of a cabinet somewhere, and now you've got a means of converting that into some kind of knowledge.
I think that's exactly it. And can I just add one thing to that? I think it's also about data that is inherently, not one single thing. So if you have a sales pipeline, your customers might be segmented by their sector or the size of the customer, but you probably put them into one of 5 boxes maybe, whereas they're not really in one of those things. It's a continuous size of organization in the marketplace. Nobody is just healthcare. They might be life sciences or research on the side. And AI allows you to get at that nuance in the data without having to pigeonhole it.
I think we drifted off my question a little bit, which was, how should I think of this? And you said, Alex, and I thought it was a very interesting point, it's about proof of concept. Is that where we are in this story? Now is the time for proofs of concept?
I think we're in an interesting place. If you try end applications and you try the AI within end applications, that's like putting nice new radiators in your building. Yeah, you're going to get a nice warm feeling from that. But actually, unless you've got the right plumbing to work with those great radiators, you're never going to get the real heat from them. The way I'm advising my clients is, yes, use the apps, use the vendors, but also start to understand, as Alex pointed to, your structured, unstructured data, and you might want to consider an experiment doing some of the plumbing work. I think I'll make a prediction that we'll either stand or not stand against time here, but I think we're going to hear the term process mining a lot more over the next few years. I think process mining is one of those things, it sort of comes in and out of favor. The thing that's blocked it a lot is the idea of having to have well-structured data and having done the investigation. I think you start to add AI to process mining, and you can start to uncover the real gems in your business. So I'm advising clients, play with the end user stuff, play with the applications available to you, but also let's look at some of the stuff you thought was off limits previously, and let's see if AI can open that up.
Ken, your hand's up.
I did put my hand up because I don't necessarily agree about the proof of concept idea. Let me understand or say it the way I see it is I think AI is not a solution in search of a problem. And I think people need to understand that. And the first step of really understanding whether or not any particular business can benefit from AI is to actually understand where you are on the maturity index for AI. Like, how ready are you? How clean is your data? Do you have hygiene? Like all the things that Steve brought up about data hygiene and the ability to know whether you have structured or unstructured data. That's secondary to really the first question is, how will AI impact your business? And understanding what that is. And again, it's whether you stay with generative AI, whether you're going with image, avatar creation, immersive experiences, whatever it might be. The first step is to really understand where are you on the timeline. A lot of companies have invested heavily in, robust CRM and robust marketing automation and robust content management. Great, wonderful. You've got an omni-channel architecture. Check the box, okay? But do you need AI? Is AI going to give you a benefit? And yes, we're all, technologists at heart, so we all understand that it is coming down to the point where AI is becoming easier to integrate and easier to operate and easier to take advantage of. But you really have to answer that first question, which is, what is it going to bring to the business before you make an investment?
Let's pause for breath and take your point there, Ken, which is how is AI going to make a difference to my business? Let's just go around the table and share some stories of recent occasions where you've seen AI make a real difference in mid-market businesses. Steve HB.
The best one I've got is I've got a client who does geospatial monitoring. They get lots and lots of video data. They then have to ship that video data, and effectively they have a room, and I'm talking a couple of thousand people going through that video data daily and providing reports and responses back. We've trialed an AI solution that can actually classify the vehicles that are going through those cameras. We're doing literally a day's worth of data in 2 hours.
And that's, an example of the unstructured data problem.
Yeah, that's a classic unstructured. And actually, not only does it go, this is a motorbike, this is a car, this is a van, this is a lorry, it'll tell you the type of vehicle as well.
Mike.
Well, I've got a slightly similar, a manufacturing client where we're harvesting data from the site, and it's in an unstructured format right now. So we haven't got completely clean and concise data, but the AI is allowing us to start identifying inefficiencies, dwell times, kit that's not being used, excess wastage, all sorts of things that are starting to come out as it's starting to group this data together for us and starting to build up a picture of the way that the organization's running, which we hadn't been able to see before.
And in both of those examples, it should be possible to extract a hard benefit, to actually value the win at the end of this. Those two are very understandable examples of specific business outcomes. Steve Kent.
Yeah, I've got a company as well that we built two or three AI solutions. One of them was in helping medical legal cases, extracting data back to the unstructured challenge, extracting data from doctors' case notes, sometimes handwritten documents from medical or hospital case notes, and then extracting data, helping to put together information in a format that would allow a professional to come in and to make determinations whether there was medical malpractice, for example. So otherwise you'd be pouring through hundreds, if not thousands of pages of documents, trying to make notes, on a notepad, probably to try and come together to a conclusion. And what AI can do now is to go into those documents and extract data that it determines are important and relevant to the work that's going on. And that's through a pre-trained model, which is just pre-trained to identify things to do with medical, whether that be anatomy, medication, things like that. So there are pre-trained models out there that you can probably use to address a business challenge that you've got and turn that around, very, very quickly. And I think that has reduced the efforts on doing that activity by at least 50%, from what I understand.
Just provide a little bit more background when you talk about pre-trained models, and how realistic is it for a mid-market business to get their hands on a pre-trained model and utilize that?
Yeah, very easy now. If you were to go to Microsoft's AI Azure, a platform that I mentioned, they have pre-trained models that allow you today to go and do things like extracting data from invoices and making sense of that data. of other documents, of doing translations. My client used their AI translator to translate. I think you posted this on a blog some time ago. 28,000 documents translated in 7 working days from Spanish to English in the format they originally started off in. So no sort of text scribing. It was actually the same sort of document presented in English. And that was done in a week that would have probably taken a team of people to do in a few months. And that's available right now today. You can go to the Microsoft website. You can go and choose one of those. You can calculate how much it's going to cost you based on how many documents they'll be processing for you. And it's very affordable and available today. No need to spend a lot of time training any model.
In some ways, what I find interesting about this is from a mid-market chief exec's point of view, this reduces the disadvantage I have compared to an enterprise. So this means I have available to me the sort of expertise that previously only an enterprise had, because they had 100 people in the translation department or whatever, and I didn't have a translation department. Well, now I have. I think it can have a dramatic leveling effect on businesses. Alex, can you give an example?
Yeah, my example is going to be very similar to Steve's, actually. So I have a client who connects patients with clinicians for the purposes of treatment. And obviously, once a patient is referred in, you want to make sure they get to the right type of clinician who can handle their case. They decided to invest in AI to do an upfront categorization of patients to particularly find the severity of their disease before putting them in to a clinician to make sure that it was something that clinician could handle and they weren't going to get bumped up and down the stack. They successfully did that using natural language processing to look at conversations that the patient had before being placed with the clinician. What was unexpected was that they also found that the AI was very good at categorizing the type of disease, and they found that patients could be subcategorized not just to the known disease types, but they found 2 unknown disease types as well. That subsequently led them to publishing a paper describing these new categories of disease. And that has enabled them to not just make the patient and clinician link more effective and more accurate upfront, but actually they're now able to more specifically see what the patient needs. And I think that's kind of serendipity is one of the things that AI can bring to us. It can find new patterns in data that we're not necessarily expecting to be there.
Yeah, we live in interesting times, don't we? Ken?
I also have done something similar with respect to clinician, and I've developed a symptom checker for consumers to say, kind of like a WebMD AI assistant that could say, okay, yeah, you put in your symptoms, and then it comes back with the recommendation, and then it finds a physician for you to say, okay, yeah, this is the person you need to go see. But I think the bigger example I have for this webinar is in customer service and in eliminating tier 1 customer service so that tier 2 was being handled by human. Tier 1, 85% of inquiries on websites can be answered with a chatbot and an intelligent chatbot. So you want to have something that actually can interpolate and, we absorbed the catalog of products that the company offered. We put in product descriptions. We added in a bunch of different information into the language model so that you could ask any kind of question. Once that came through, it replaced tier 1, and it freed up their resources on the call center side because they were always that, customer service long hold times were leading to churn and loyalty problems. And so by using AI and the chatbot, we were able to solve 85% tier 1. And the AI knew enough to escalate it, say, let me put you in touch with this other operator, introduce the operator, make sure the operator got on, and then the AI signed off. And it was very intelligent. It felt like a real conversation.
So I think that chatbots have got a bad name based on what they used to be.
Yes.
2, 3, 4 years ago. But actually, what the stats I see is that often customers are happier with the chatbot than they are with a human. So the quality of interaction can be outstanding, can't it?
Yeah, a funny anecdote on that is that one of the things we were testing, we were working with a mid-sized retailer, and so a couple of the conversations you monitor and you curate some of the conversations to make sure that the accuracy is being maintained. And I was surprised by the number of people that were flirting with our chatbot. Like actually trying to flirt with the chatbot, which I thought was hysterical.
No, I can understand. I understand that because I say please and thank you to ChatGPT. I just can't help myself. Mike, let me ask you a question. So throughout all of this, one of the background issues that people are always concerned about is compliance, security, legal risk, all of this stuff. What's your view of that position?
I have a very simple view at the moment about that. It's a very complex picture, and I have a very simple view. You've got to take responsibility for what the AI does. Can't offload that to anybody else, to the purveyor of the AI, to any other third party. So I think in all of these things we've talked about, and all these exciting opportunities, got to put the checks and balances in place to make sure that you can stand behind that statement of I'm responsible for what it does, so that it doesn't do anything in an automated fashion that doesn't have the ability to intervene and to stop it. The legal frameworks will mature over time. The challenge is, particularly with generative AI, it can be difficult to recreate what the AI has done and to predict what it's going to do, like humans, I guess. And so the challenge there is, if you can't predict what it's going to do, how can the vendor of it say that they're responsible for it? In other words, so it is us, it is the people who are using it who are going to have to remain responsible.
Other thoughts on that?
Yeah, one of the thoughts that I have is around sort of maybe creating like an AI ethics committee. I mean, seeing it as something at the very start of your journey to get right. There have been lots of stories of AI, I guess, being misused or not understanding the importance of securing data. When ChatGPT first came out, it was a little bit of a Wild West, it felt like. People uploading confidential documents into the chat window, potentially, giving away client details and in breach of data security policies. So I think it's important to treat this with the care it needs. There are other stories out there about sort of misusing with things like bias. If you don't look at how AI learns, there's a very good chance that you might unwittingly have it proposing things that interpret sort of human bias. And so when you get an answer back from AI, it comes back with something that's based on human bias. I think a great example was AWS for using it to screen candidates to come for job interviews. And I think it so happened at the time, the split between males and females was like 70-30. So the AI thought, well, that's what I'm going to screen then. Yes. So I'm going to screen out females to come for job interviews. And I'm going to stick with males being at 70% because that's obviously what I need to do. And nobody had told it otherwise. And that got out into the press. So if you go back, I think it was 2017, 2018, that was a big news item and they shut the whole system down. So I think you've got to sort of think about how this could potentially impact your brand if you misuse it or if you're found to be doing something untoward. So I think getting in early, having policies, making sure people understand the risks around using AI is going to be really critical for business leaders.
And that, in many ways, is like any other complex part of your business, isn't it? That if you are the boss, it's difficult to ensure that complex part of your business is going to deliver an acceptable outcome, isn't it? I suppose the mistake here is thinking that AI is like a calculator when it isn't. It's much more complex than that.
I think the biggest pitfall that you have to be aware of with AI is the risk that you've got in your liability and exposure, especially if you're training on public models or using something public. The litigation that's started already around copyright infringement and privacy are very real. There are a number of initiatives underway in the United States. The president just issued a set of executive orders around AI. There's a consortium in the EU, also in China, that are all starting to figure out how to develop a standard for this. And how do we protect copyright? You saw in the United States, the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA were on strike because of digital likeness and the protections against AI. That is the biggest obstacle to adoption to AI today, is the worry about, are these models trained that are in the public domain? Can you use that information? What happens to you if you use content that was created by an AI engine that was plagiarized? Those are the big risks. And I think we're not going to overcome that on this call, obviously, but certainly regulatory and legal findings and, the laws have to change. And I think the constraints that AI needs to be placed under, and also to Steve's point, how to avoid the bias and, include diversity and inclusion into some of the thinking around the AI models. Those are all the most critical points in my mind about obstacles.
Of all of these, I think that the privacy one is the most real and the most present, in my opinion. I mean, I had an example just this morning with a contract on my screen, a personal contract on my screen, and Copilot popped up and offered to do something. And I thought, well, hang on, if I click that button, does that mean that the contents of this document is now going to be somewhere floating around in Copilot's neural network? And I guess this is the reality, is that as soon as you use AI tools to process any documents, to give you opinions or summaries or whatever, your information has disappeared into a black hole somewhere.
There's an old saying on that, isn't there? You know, when our email first came along, one of the warnings that everybody was given was never write anything on email you're not prepared to shout across a crowded room.
Yeah.
I think we just have to reapply those rules.
Yes. So this is the end of privacy. Is that what you're saying, Steve?
Well, it's actually about being more conscious of the fact what I'm putting into this computer no longer sits in this computer.
Yeah.
That goes back to private versus public large language models as well. And ChatGPT Turbo now allows you to create your own unique GPT, to be specific, and you can keep your data private. It's not about that privacy has gone away. It's that you have to be more protective of what you need to keep private.
And I think you raise a good point, though, Ken, that ChatGPT are giving you the ability to create your own private models now. Teachable Machine's been out there from Google for a few years. I think that's another area of growth. When I sort of talked about looking at the plumbing, some of this stuff you might say we want to embed our USP and our own IP, and it's perfectly viable for mid-markets who've got businesses who've got a couple of technical people to do a bit of stuff that Alex was suggesting and going, well, one of my technical people, if they've got base level programming skills, let's give them something like Teachable Machine and let's see where we can go with that and start to build some of our own private models as well.
I think this is a really interesting point because in terms of the accessibility of the kinds of things we're talking about, I think if you look at the examples where we've deployed these kinds of solutions, what it's actually consisted of in many cases is one of our people who's connected with the C-suite and understands an opportunity, understands an idea, and then one or two, a data scientist, a programmer, who understand the tools in sufficient detail, who can actually turn that into reality in a period of often days.
Absolutely.
So it's an extraordinary change, isn't it?
And as you said, it's a great leveler for mid-sized businesses that haven't got all those corporate resources.
Okay, we have got an AI policy template, which I will email out to all the attendees. Having heard all this, I think the key question that mid-market CEO is going to ask is, where do I start tomorrow? What do I actually do next? Steve Cairns.
Well, one of the ideas that might be to have an AI early adopters group, people from, I would suggest, both the business, maybe tech-savvy individuals within the organization that would like to see change, as well as some of the technology experts in the organization, start looking to identify processes in the business that are ripe for automation or enhancement. There are things that maybe they're complex, they're repetitive, they're time-consuming or costly, or prone to human error, where maybe AI could play a role in helping to create improvements. And I think you should treat it a bit like any project. You should have a business case on what would the positive outcome be of investing some time and effort in doing something with AI. But I think we've all got so many opportunities. It must be difficult for a business leader to know where to start. And maybe it is tapping into some of the people in the organization who would like to see change, like to see things improved, and coming together and having some plans. What you don't really want is to have people doing it out of view, just playing with ChatGPT, for example, and not sharing what they're doing. So I think an early adopters group, and I've got one with one of my clients where we have a Teams channel and we openly talk about challenges that people are trying to overcome with the use of AI and share their successes, share their challenges, and collaborate on it. And I think that means it's a lot more open within the organization of things that we could then see benefit from. And it's not done under the covers, if you like.
I'm also interested in that early adopters group because it can help shift the culture in the organization, that it can say to everyone, this is a good thing.
Absolutely.
As you said, this isn't something that the kind of techie guys are doing off in a corner. This is something that is engaging with the whole business.
Definitely.
Are there senior people on that group, just out of interest?
Senior-ish, obviously not the board level, but certainly senior departmental leaders, because they're the ones that often see the benefits. If they see automation helping to increase productivity within their teams, then they can take on more business, more work with the same level of team structure and not having to add resources. So they do see the benefits. So those are the ones that generally fly the flag the most.
But is there something in this about, in terms of people's fear, that what the last thing I want is AI that's going to take my job away. Has that been an issue?
Not really. I think what I've tried to do personally is to always sell it as this is a tool to help improve or automate or augment humans. This is not to replace. So this is to make the job of humans, and certainly those, mundane jobs that we all have, easier to do. I mean, now you can get a pivot table created using Copilot just by giving it an instruction, rather than having to teach someone how to create a pivot table or anything within the Microsoft products. And so that's what's going to change. You're going to find ways to get to the outcome you're looking for much easier and much faster without needing to go through complex training or use highly skilled resources. But I don't see it's ever going to replace. I think it's going to augment and going to help.
Other people, the question is, where do I start tomorrow?
So I could add a bit more colour to that. I'm actually sitting in one of my clients at the moment, and I'm going straight from this webinar to the kickoff of the what we're calling our Future Leaders program, which is people one down from the exec. Myself and the chief exec will be presenting to them, and they're starting exactly the process that Steve has just described, with the terms of reference and a ethical policy around how we're going to approach it. And this team then will be tasked with looking for opportunities across the organization and then feeding back to me and the chief exec, and for us to support them. So that helps with both the culture, moving the culture on in the organization, and it not being done just by the techies. In fact, there's only one, apart from me, only one technical person in the room. So it's being done by the organization. And the chief exec of another client of mine had said, quite brutally, I think, he said, the only people who will lose their jobs around AI are the ones who are unwilling to work with it. Which I thought was quite tough, but the whole point here is, you're quite right, Steve, I think it's not about removing people from work, it's augmenting and doing more with what we've got.
My thought on it is, you start with the human aspect. So the first thing is, the 2 points that Mike and Steve have raised is, you've got to make sure you're communicating with your workforce. Because unless you're communicating with your workforce, they're going to sit there thinking, well, what's the real agenda? So involving the workforce and that communication around the fact that this is to augment, not to replace, is absolutely the starting point. After that, I would start to ask, what are all the things that we've put off and avoided because we never really had a way of doing it? Don't look for the low-hanging fruit. Look for the stuff that's been around for years that's always been a thorny issue, and start working with those ones. Because then you'll see real deliverable value early.
All of these examples so far, interestingly, have been about engagement, haven't they? Maybe that's the point here. This is a change curve. Ken, what were you going to say?
I was going to circle back to what I said earlier, is that I think the first step is to really do an objective assessment of where you are and how AI is going to benefit your organization. And I don't mean that just from a technology stack standpoint. I mean from a cultural shift, from a business perspective. If you're a private equity firm or a hedge fund, and you have portfolio companies, you're going to look at AI for economies of scale, or looking at how that data is going against the other markets. And I think, again, here's the shameless Freeman Clarke plug, is that you're not in it alone. Freeman Clarke is specializing in this. We've developed some AI workshops to actually help our clients understand and achieve these objectives and define them. So, I do think that that's the first step, is to really understand, what are you asking it to do? Like, it's not a problem in search of a solution, and it's not a solution in search of a problem. You need to really take the time to really understand how it will specifically affect your business. And that's where we can help, is understanding that and understanding the nuances. We have case studies and examples of industries across a multitude of industries of where AI can plug in. The question is, does it make sense for your business?
Just to build on your point there, Ken, we're typically running maturity assessment workshops. We're offering to run a few of these before the holiday season for a small number of businesses. So feel free to get in touch with me. We're providing some contact details at the end. Any more to say about this? Because I think this is the crunch issue for many of the people who are watching and listening. Is going to be, where do I start? What do I do next?
I think there's an interesting point there, Graham, about looking at the skills in the business and trying to figure out who in the business is capable of being engaged on this topic. And in many businesses right now, particularly in terms of generative AI. There might be pockets of expertise, but they might not be very deep. There are some areas such as translating documentation from one language to another, where generative AI or similar technologies will probably have been in use many, many years. And there are other areas, for example, on the marketing and positioning side of content generation, where it may not be in use at all, and people would be a little bit wary of using it. So looking at where the skills are in the organization, and also thinking about when people are coming into the organization, if we're making new hires, and particularly as sort of younger people come into the business, what is their expectation of the business's digital capability going to be? You know, in 5 years' time, are people still going to be writing emails and making phone calls in the same way they do today? I'm not sure they will be. And that might be the type of thing that somebody would come in and look at. You know, if you're not using AI within Outlook, for example, they'd look at that the same as a business that might have been using carbon copiers a few years ago or still sends faxes today. You know, there is going to be an increasing expectation of the level of digital technology that a business has. And we'll need to think about how people coming in, not just get the kind of skills and bring sort of new ideas into the organization, but also thinking about how processes work within the business. Are we going to be training in the same way? Are we actually going to be trying to change the culture of the organization to work in slightly different ways? There are some slightly more fundamental things there that this AI sort of transformation will end up, causing bit by bit within organizations. They will change, substantially over a period of 5 years.
It's interesting that you talk about people's expectations. I mean, the hiring problem is pretty much is one of the top three issues that chief execs talk about again and again and again. And I tend to respond to that in terms of automation technologies augmenting your workforce and improving your efficiency. But you're also making another point, which is that actually you won't be able to hire good people in a few years unless they're coming into an organization that is heavily invested in these kinds of technologies.
That's absolutely right. We're seeing this in the software development world already. So GitHub Copilots and similar tools are being seen as, de facto tools that should be available in the same way as having a development environment, a test infrastructure, and the other things that an engineer would expect. And that will be the same across lots of different roles. This is not a technology specific thing. If you're in marketing, you'll probably expect to be able to get, cuttings from yesterday's press that is AI analyzed and is much broader and deeper than what you get currently. And that would be seen as a necessary part of the job and just table stakes for being in that kind of role.
Before we go on to some of these questions, then let me just ask you to give one pearl of wisdom, one soundbite. What would you say to a chief exec of a mid-market business about deploying AI today? Steve HB.
Take advantage of what the vendors are giving you now, but look at where you can introduce it for your USP and your IP as well.
I love that, because as ever, what we're always saying to clients is focus on what is your USP and what is your IP and use technology to help you achieve that.
Yes.
Quite right. Mike?
Kind of nicked some of my thunder there. You can fix all of the stuff underneath the covers that everyone does around efficiency, but look for the thing that's going to make you unique in the market. So your own IP.
Steve Cairns.
I think this is going to be more significant, or people are saying it's going to be more significant than the Industrial Revolution. And basically it is here and it's here to stay. And if you're not thinking about it and seeing ways that your business can benefit from the use of AI and automation, give it 5 years and it'll probably be game over for your company, because all your competitors are doing it. So it's something to really talk about and think about right now.
I couldn't agree more. And in a way, I'd go further than saying it's here. It's not a change, it's a change in the rate of change. So actually, this isn't about something being here and to stay. It's something being here and moving the game forward ever faster. Alex?
I'd say don't just look at it as being digital transformation in the way that we've done it before. You've got to look at your business from all angles, top down, bottom up, and find the people in the business who really understand it, fundamentally, have the real sense of how a business works and can use their imagination to see how AI can be brought into the business in the most effective way.
Yeah.
I think the velocity of change has shifted dramatically. And I think, if you look at mobile adoption in the enterprise, where, years ago, nobody had a cell phone or was getting their mail on their mobile device. And now it's a fact of life, right? We've all migrated to that. So we're a mobile society. AI is in the same boat, only it's moving much faster. And it's like you could get on board today or you could get out of the way and you're going to be on the road to kill, because you will not be able to survive without having some type of AI integrated into your business. The question is, where is it going to benefit the most? And you need to be thinking about that now. What I advise our clients is, if you want to leapfrog your competitors, you really need to look at how the technology can be leveraged in your organization to give you that competitive advantage.
Okay, that's great. Thank you all very much. I just want to come back to a question that you answered online there, Ken, which is about AI opening the door to hacking and other frauds. How do we protect ourselves from AI-based fraud? So AI, of course, offers nefarious individuals, criminals, and so on, opportunities for their own aims. What can we do? The cyber problem has just got worse.
I think the threat level has increased substantially because AI is intelligent. And, again, what I tell people all the time is AI today is a 5-year-old child. When it becomes a teenager, you have to really worry, right? And so when you think about cyber threat, today the level of sophistication of email phishing is, you get a PayPal example, your account's been suspended, or your bank, whatever. We all have the story of the Nigerian prince who has, $10 million for you. And if you send $100,000, you're going to get it, right? But the level of sophistication now and the ability to spoof emails so that you actually have to do it, everybody needs to be diligent about it. And cybersecurity is a major threat. Breaking codes, breaking passwords, secure passwords, two-factor authentication. That's why you're seeing companies like Google moving to passkey, moving away from passwords, facial recognition taking on. So you have a more firm way to authenticate. Identity and access control management is a key area here. I think cyber is one of the areas where the protections that need to be put in place and the things that you need to think about, those are critical factors. Make no mistake. I think cyber, both the ability to be nefarious and the ability to actually protect against it, will advance substantially over the next 12 to 24 months as some of these new, algorithms become available. There's actually a large language model that is looking at cybersecurity threats based on social media posts and interactions that you have, and it's actually looking to see of your credit card transactions, et cetera, to determine whether or not there's anything going on. And so the fraud protection unit at a credit card company that I know has built in a very sophisticated AI engine to detect potential fraud, and then they have a whole tiered model of how they can actually accelerate and shut things down.
So it cuts both ways. The AI presents a greater threat. AI also provides us with means of countering that threat as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But practically, what does this mean if I'm a chief exec and I'm already losing sleep? Now I'm losing even more sleep. What steps should I take?
One of the things I'm doing, Graham, is actually looking now at the solutions, the cybersecurity solutions out there that are also supported or powered by AI. It's almost like fighting fire with fire. Is that in the old days when you had your cybersecurity solutions that had thousands of different configuration settings that you'd have to set up in a hope of maybe catching an email that is coming in from a scammer, is that now you have to implement solutions, I think, that are powered by AI, that are looking for behavioral patterns, that are looking for someone's using a computer in an odd location. They were in London a minute ago, now they're in Russia. But AI are the ones the solutions that can detect those anomalies much more so than that sort of traditional system. So the first question is, if we are looking at investing in a cybersecurity suite of tools, are those powered by AI? I think that's one of the first questions you would ask your supplier.
Everyone would claim to be powered by AI, wouldn't they? I mean, that is part of the problem now. Everyone's slapped the initials AI on their products, whatever it is.
I think the simple message for the mid-market is, well, for anyone really, is it's an arms race. It has always been an arms race. And the only thing you can do is stay in the race. That simply is what both Ken and Steve have said. I'm just summarising it, is we've just got to stay in the race.
And that remains the challenge with cyber, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think to some extent as well, just to add to that, Graham, the basic premise here hasn't changed. The technology doesn't matter so much. When you're assessing the risk of something in your business, and let's say you've got a chatbot on the website, if the chatbot can just access questions from your FAQ and it just gives very plain responses, that's always going to be quite a low risk. If the chatbot can access customer accounts and can see their transaction history, that could be quite a high risk. And it's that capability, looking at risks just in terms of what is the potential severity of this thing going wrong and what is the likelihood. And it's only really when you get into that high severity or high likelihood area that you might need to think about AI specific controls to mitigate that risk.
Linked to this question of what's the reality about AI is about selecting the right tools and the right suppliers, and how can I separate the fact from the hype? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's about hype. I think there are lots of businesses out there trying to establish themselves as players in this market. And I'll go back to the dot-com bubble. We all remember Netscape, and that was the browser we all used. Some of us may remember using Lycos as a search engine. But the fact is, there are going to be winners and losers in this. The first thing is understand the fundamental technologies that you want to work with, not the vendor badge. And then when you've got that, start to understand who the strong players in that space are. So do a little bit of vendor research, or that part of what I do for I've got my clients want to run their businesses. They want me to provide that vendor research and give my opinion on who the strong players are. And they rely on the fact that we have, as trained IT professionals, we've been through this previously. So the way I'm helping is I'm drawing it back to previous examples of other times when the world has been like this, and applying basic business principles. Are the fundamentals of the business good? Are they well backed? What's their burn rate? Have they got real products out there in the marketplace, or is it mostly on some sort of curve somewhere that's going to appear next year?
People like us are very, very familiar with suppliers who hype their product. I suppose that's the point, isn't it? We've had a career of this. One of the other questions here was about whether to wait and see, or whether to move quickly at an accelerated pace. How do I decide when so much is happening, when there are so many options? Do I move or do I wait?
I think you have to evaluate the opportunity, Graham, because the other thing is that the market is moving at the same time. A year ago, GPT could look at text, but it couldn't look at images at the same time. Today it can. So the capability of these systems is changing year on year. And if somebody was to start a 3-year AI implementation project today, in 3 years' time, it will probably be irrelevant, right? So there's a choice about the scale of project that you take on. There's an evaluation of how much knowledge you have of what the current state of the art is, but then also a little bit of an estimation of where things are going. Something may not be quick enough or cheap enough or, generally performant enough today, but in 18 months' time, it might be. So that implementation that wouldn't work today, maybe you put it off by 12 months just because you want the cost to come down, or you need it to work faster in the field. I think it really comes down to just getting enough awareness of what the products are capable of doing. Yes, there is some hype in there, but the hype should give you a little bit of an idea of where the products will be going if they're not there today. And then also just that horizon scanning function. When we talk about the industry changing faster than ever, I think it's that need to keep on pace with what the capabilities are and how they're changing, and that, building that set of knowledge that's going to really help people evaluate the opportunities that are worth pursuing and the ones that aren't.
Let me just put a last question to us, which is about the ethical issue of using AI without compromising customer or employee trust. Have any people got any comments on that?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is going to be really important is that there needs to be transparency, particularly with customers. I've heard so many stories today with AI being used to conjure up proposals or to generate images. Maybe I heard of a design company where they were using AI to generate images of products that weren't real. It was just an AI generated image, and probably trying to build the real thing might be quite challenging. And I think as long as you are transparent with your customers as to where AI is being used, I don't think then you'll break the trust. I think it's when you try and use it nefariously and try and present it as something you stand by, and yet it's just been made up by AI. And we've all heard of things like hallucinations, where the AI I think someone said, treat AI as like a very intelligent student, but just happens to be drunk, because you can't trust everything they say. Yeah, you've just got to be smart and transparent when you're using it, so your customers can remain trusting of you.
Other thoughts on this, or particularly in terms of trust for employees?
I think we've covered the bit about employees and staff. Is that got to bring them with us, and so what we've talked around working groups, terms of reference, open inquiry into this, and it covers the previous point about where should you place your bets, or we should start placing them now, small, really small bets, and do it as a collective across the organisation.
Okay, let me draw this to a close then. Can I say thank you to all the panel, all the attendees. Our journeys with our clients typically start with a maturity assessment. We're always happy to get engaged. We're always happy to talk. Here's also a link to the AI usage policy template that I talked about. But from me, that's all. Thank you very much indeed for attending.